The Cruiserweight division was and still is a fan favorite, from the lucha libre style to the Japanese style. It had its own exciting ambiance to it. Very few times was such a vast array of talent seen in one place going at each other on a weekly basis since the 80s in territory wrestling. The talent sharpened each other and made many champions, stars, and respected wrestling legends worldwide. WCW Cruiserweights were beyond amazing, and they were fan favorites, but the company never seemed to capitalize on the popularity. The term Cruiserweight was introduced to the United States by WCW in 1996, but was first known as the light heavyweight division. It was an alternative to the heavyweight division that had been the focal point of nearly every wrestling promotion. Big muscular guys with charisma was what packed the arenas and sold the merchandise. This division dared to be different, with the first requirement being no competitor could be over 220 pounds. This ruled out nearly everyone on the WCW roster at the time except for an elite group of recently recruited wrestlers for the already established light heavyweight division that saw Flying Brian Pillman become the first WCW light heavyweight champion on October 27, 1991, when he defeated Richard Morton in the tournament final to win the title. However, when Brad Armstrong was forced to relinquish the title due to injury on September 2, 1992, it became inactive. In 1995, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko were making a name for themselves in the States after their successful stints in places like Japan and Mexico. Paul Heyman brought them into ECW and gave them a platform to introduce themselves to the American audience, some of who were already familiar with them through tape trading. These guys put the wrestling in Extreme Championship Wrestling, and now they were the foundation of the soon-to-be Cruiserweight division. Eric Bischoff took notice and quickly offered them a deal they couldn't refuse with money Heyman couldn't match. A couple months after losing those guys, Heyman reached out to Konnan, who was in Mexico making a name for himself in lucha libre, to bring him and other luchadors to the States and showcase their amazing style in ECW. Along with Konnan, this brought over Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera, and the 20-year-old Rey Mysterio Jr. Almost immediately, the ECW audience took to the lucha style. The guys even incorporated the extreme style into their matches by performing moves outside the ring and even outside the arena. Some fans even started to refer to it as Extreme Lucha Libre. They spent less than a year in ECW before Eric Bischoff came calling to poach more talent from Paul Heyman. Much like the first time, Bischoff got all his targets in one shot, signing Mysterio, Konnan, Juventud, and Psychosis. They weren't the only signees of Bischoff's new venture. La Parka, Billy Kidman, and Ultimo Dragon were added to the roster also. As soon as a solid roster was set in place, the magic began. The Cruiserweight division started putting on matches that wowed the crowd, from the acrobatic chain wrestling to their death-defying high-risk maneuvers, some of which had never been seen in the States. Eric Bischoff stated in an interview, "For me, when I created the Cruiserweight division, it was because I had so many heavyweights that the pace of their match, the amount of action that happened in 6 or 12-minute segments, and the way that action flowed to the audience needed to be distinguished. It needed to be different than everything else on the show. If everything is the same, then nothing is unique. And that's why I created the Cruiserweight division." A move was made to bring Sean Waltman, now going by Six, as a new member of the NWO. The plan was for Six to be the focal point and star of the Cruiserweight to represent their NWO strongly, and have impressive performances against fellow work rate stars. As we know, this was short-lived due to his departure from the company. One thing seemed to be missing from the division. There didn't seem to be any time spent on developing significant storylines for the people to get invested into. It was as if the Cruiserweights were only there to fill up the space on the card. Sonny Ono, who served as an on-screen manager for the Japanese wrestlers, appeared on Perched on the Top Rope podcast and stated that Chris Jericho deserves credit for helping the WCW Cruiserweights get some storyline direction. Storylines and Cruiserweights didn't really start until Chris Jericho started demanding more story background. Chris Jericho brought new light to the division when he defeated Six for the Cruiserweight Championship in June of 1997. Previously, he had been competing for the United States Championship. Defeating Six would mark Jericho's first ever championship win in WCW. Soon after, he would then go on to feud with Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio in many battles revolving around the Cruiserweight Championship. And one of his longest feuds and most memorable was the feud against Dean Malenko. That started when Jericho was trash-talking Malenko and his wrestling ability. This would lead to him dodging Malenko over and over again until they eventually had a match. Malenko lost the match and went on a temporary leave. Jericho would then go on to portray him in a negative light for months. J.J. Dillon informed Jericho that he would have to defend his championship against whoever won the Battle Royal in Slamboree 1998. Malenko competed in the match as a masked man. He won the match and revealed his true identity as Dean Malenko. During his feud with Dean Malenko, he adapted Malenko's gimmick, the man of 1,000 holes, and claimed to be the man of 1,004 holes, to say how he was better. During a now famous segment, Jericho came out with a long list of submission holds, claiming to be an expert with them all. He would then begin to read them off in what turned out to be one of the most memorable and entertaining segments. Jericho would lead the Cruiserweight division in WCW for the WWF. There's nothing to the decision other than Jericho just wanted to work with Vince McMahon. But the next names to leave were completely fed up with the lack of opportunities for guys their size. Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko also made the jump to the WWF, debuting as a stable named the Radicals. Back in WCW, the Cruiserweight division was facing a bit of a decline, not from any fault of their own, but due to the people within the company not taking them seriously, and not to mention mistakes on the part of the powers that be. They showed absolutely no respect to the Cruiserweights. During their match, the commentators would take their time to talk about other stories going on in the company, like everything going on with the NWO. The same people the Cruiserweights were being used to job for on a weekly basis. Kevin Nash had a lot of creative input backstage and was blamed by some for sabotaging the booking of the Cruiserweights. He often referred to them as vanilla midgets and fought against their pushes, if any, outside the division. At one point, Eric Bischoff made it known to the Luchadors that he wanted them to eventually lose their masks. They refused, but ultimately had no choice, meaning Luchadors Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera, and Rey Mysterio Jr. lost their masks in matches with ridiculous stipulations like hair versus mask. This not only took away from some of the most popular wrestlers in the division because they were losing masks with no further plans in sight, while also limiting their marketing potential, but it was highly disrespectful to what their masks stood for and the cultural importance of them. In Mexico, luchadors usually only lost their masks when they retired. It was obvious that Bischoff didn't have any interest pushing the Cruiserweights when Eddie Guerrero created the LWO, and it was over before he even began. In the last year of its existence, Vince Russo came into the company and he treated the Cruiserweight title like a gimmick prop, almost as if it had lost all prestige. Any and everyone was winning it. Even the women got in on it, with Medusa and also Daphne capturing the title. Even the corny JR parody character named Oklahoma won it at one point. It became the equivalent of what the WWE 24/7 Championship is today. Vince Russo completely ignored the division rules for weight classes. If Eric Bischoff and Kevin Nash were the beginning of the end for the Cruiserweight division, Vince Russo was the final nail in the coffin. He never cared for the division, and it showed. WCW was purchased by the WWE in March of 2001, and the Cruiserweight division was brought over and soon dismantled. The Cruiserweight title was renamed the Light Heavyweight Championship for the next year while it was defended on house shows. 2002, it was back to being referred to as the Cruiserweight title. For the next 5 years, the title would be featured on weekly television until 2007, when WWE did away with it. During that time, Cruiserweights like Rey Mysterio, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero found major success on Raw and SmackDown, even capturing the Heavyweight Championship. Thanks to Paul Heyman giving them a chance while he was head of creative on SmackDown, these guys were able to show the talents no one would allow them to display because they looked at their size. In 2016, WWE held a Cruiserweight Classic tournament for wrestlers 205 pounds and under that aired on the WWE Network. Tournament qualifying matches took place in various promotions on the independent circuit, and 32 men competed for the new Cruiserweight title. They even gave the Cruiserweights their own show called 205 Live. The new title, however, did not hold the same lineage and was renamed the NXT Cruiserweight Championship in 2019 before it was permanently retired shortly after the move to NXT. Today, a lot of Cruiserweight greats from that time are still in the business in some capacity, whether as active wrestlers, trainers, producers, or commentators. Their influence is prominent in the young stars of today, because a lot of stars of all sizes and genders have included more athletic high-flying moves into their repertoire. It's not unusual to see a 6'7", 300-pounder taking a dive on the outside of the ring or pulling off a moonsault in matches today. That's a testament to the hard work and innovative talent first showcased to the world in the legendary WCW Cruiserweight division. A division that was never meant to be taken seriously, but connected with people who elevated it to undeniable heights. Thank you for watching this video. More to come. Please like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on social media.